we couldn't go down this road of routines and procedures without talking about database decision making. We could also task analyze this database decision making. We first collect data, we reflect, think about the data, monitor to make sure the student's progressing. We have to ask ourselves, is the student moving toward independence with this routine? If the student's not making progress, then we have to adjust our strategy or our intervention. We just a bunch of them. Just we teach with as with any skill that we're teaching our students. You need to remember that this is an ongoing process. It's not just a few steps to follow and then you're done. It's an iterative process. Why is taking data important? Well, I think we all know that. And this quote kind of sums it up. Let's take a minute and look at some quick and practical ways to take data on routines and procedures. This particular data sheet was adapted from the STAR curriculum. Some of you guys may be using STAR or LINK's curriculum and using their data sheets. If you are, great, continue on, but make sure that you're reflecting on your data. Let's look at this sheet right quick, just to make sure we're on the same page for data collection. So the first thing, you have the task analysis for the routine on the left side. And you'll see that red box come up. Yep. At the bottom, you can customize the criteria and what level would be considered mastery and how often to take the data. We recommend weekly if you're working on this every day, but if your class meets less often, maybe more often. Just depends on the skill that you're taking data on. While we're collecting data, we need to reflect. On this data sheet, a score of 1 tells us that we need to do some direct teaching. A 2 tells us that we need to look at a prompt or provide a scaffold for that step. A 4 means we need to reinforce because the students reached a level of independence. This can also be scored for the whole class, and we're going to look at that next. Maybe. So this is a little story we made up about coming back from the holidays. Our students obviously forgot what to do as far as entering the classroom. So our team decided to develop a task analysis that outlined exactly what we expected. We posted our expectations by the door for a few days with the date that we planned to start. So we began taking data at like a 30,000-foot view of the whole class. Clearly, on 119, the students didn't take us seriously as 13 students didn't meet expectations on the first step. We provided several types of prompts and scaffolds while we were in the explicit instruction phase of this routine. As time went by, most students had learned the routine. We began to see patterns in specific students who weren't meeting the expectation. And you can see that over on 221 and on 331. If you notice the data on 221, you'll notice that Kennedy and Spring were really struggling with this routine after a month. They were talking so much. They were required. That modification ended up being successful. Jacoby was coming to class from basketball, and after talking to coach, we decided since he's doing his best, we'd give him a little grace on that first step of the routine. But notice the students who had recurring problems with getting started on their bell ringers. These students ended up needing scaffolds to get started. We began with some super easy bell ringers to build their confidence, which worked for 2 of them. The other 2 continued to end up needing a checklist of the resources they could reference to complete their bell ringer. We created a list, hung it on the board, and that ended up being a scaffold that benefited the entire class. So this is how you can take that data sheet and move it to your whole class and kind of narrow down who needs what specific strategies. So a few pro tips. Just remember that routine data is that is taken in a general education class can help the staff focus attention on specific skills that students need to be successful in their general education classroom. And parents and school staff enjoy watching those students move towards independence, and the routine forms and the data can document this process. I used to love taking a data sheet to a parent-teacher conference and showing how that student had moved to independence. Consider your frequency of data collection, more or less, depending on how often your students complete the routine. Select data days. For example, on Monday, you collect arrival routine data. On Thursday, you collect transition routine data. You can add a routine to the mix once students have mastered some of those routines. And you don't have to target more than 2 or 3 routines at a time. We suggest that maybe just start with 1 or 2. We're talking about generalization. What is it? It's the ability to perform a skill in a different way under different conditions, like home versus school versus restaurant, and in different ways. Say the bathroom at home versus the bathroom at school, and continue to use those skills over time. Why do we need to think about generalization? It's a difficult time just showing a skill under any other way than the exact way under the exact conditions they were taught. For example, washing their hands with a professional in the classroom bathroom only. If anybody else is there, we have a substitute, they're not going to do it. Once you're seeing some consistent 4s on that data sheet for independence, you'll use students who will need to continue that instruction. They'll need to continue the instruction, but you're going to have some that automatically get it. They will begin to pick that up. So when we talk about maintenance, the other part of generalization, we want to just ask ourselves, can the student continue this routine over time? Are they independent over time? It's important to check this periodically and make sure that they can still do the routine without prompting. And if the skill hasn't been retained, then you'll need to figure out where the breakdown is occurring and do some reteaching. Other things, kind of our pro tips for this is to collaborate. Ask for support from building teams. Consider vertical and horizontal teams, a teacher across the hall, special educator, other specialists, paraprofessionals. Forget about parents and families. You can provide a guide to families for supporting the routine at home. Related services, whoop, whoop. Speech, OT, PT, always great collaborators and can help troubleshoot specific issues. And then your support staff, your cafeteria staff, bus drivers, office staff, most of the time they are more than happy to collaborate on routines. They are struggling to get the kids to follow routines in their areas as well.
If you are familiar with Project Prepare, you know that we have Educator Tools that we provide. So the first thing that we want to remind you to do is to add to your data binder. Any completed data sheets would go in your data folder under the data section, wherever it's indicated in your table of contents. So you want to know to add those at this time. We have a task analysis, and it will show you the steps that you need to follow to get started on doing your task analysis, choosing which type of training procedure you're going to use, and prompting or scaffolding. And of course, we have a fidelity checklist that can be used by educators to do like a self-check and see where they are, but it could also be used as a walkthrough tool for administrators.
And just, excuse me, just to wrap up, for your routines and procedures to be successful and to teach student independence, we have to have these other foundational pieces that you see in the puzzle in place. Hopefully these look familiar because there are training topics for Project Prepare that we've addressed so far this year. And the procedures and routines that we've talked about today, that builds upon all of the other strategies that we've been talking about throughout this year and training on.